This is Chuck Oliver and Davis Oliver. Welcome to Taxes Saved. Super excited to share with you our Taxes Saved case of the week. And as we go through this, I want to have people pay particular attention to the fact that we have this one big, beautiful bill act that's passed, which creates opportunities, but it's also creating obstacles and a lot of uncertainty. So the time to really dig in and take advantage of low taxes are now, because in Washington, they say tax policy permanent isn't always permanent. And most tax policy, according to Congress, should be written in pencil. So changes can take place. Now, in this particular case, pay attention to the fact that this client's doing a multi-year strategy that is doing an enormous amount of Roth conversion and saving not just short-term tax savings, but also long-term tax savings in very, very high numbers. So, Davis, let's jump in.
Yeah, another exciting one here this week, Dad. I'll share my screen so everyone can view this here. All right. So what you're seeing, of course, typically is we have the return on the left for the client, and this one's a single filer, as you'll see here, and in the great state of Maryland. And then we have their scenario of what's going on here on the right. Right. So we'll break this down. I was just sharing some of those details there. Right. So all this income added up. If you see the screen here on the left with the tax return. You're looking at, this client's just recently retired, so they have very, very little W-2 income. But you can see the big crux of income for them. They have about almost 1.8 million of tax deferred value, right? So this is a big conversion from them. This is actually the first year we got to work with this client. And so here you'll see we Roth converted a good chunk of how it worked for this client with loss limitations of 692,000 of this about $1.8 million dollars they had in tax deferred. They also had some pension income, as you see here on line 5B. And then they also had, you can see here, a capital gain here on line 7, and then the big loss of what solution they provide here in a second. So all in, all of this income added up between capital gain, Roth conversion, and pension income. They're looking at 818,906 bucks of annual income. And that's going to have a $300,000 tax burden, state and federal, with doing nothing. Right? So, what do we do, right? A lot of our clients that are listening in are frequent listeners. You've probably heard of this strategy a lot at this point, but it's a great one, right? We like to cook with what, obviously has the best ingredients and the best results of those ingredients. And this Section 181 is a phenomenal strategy that this client took advantage of for their solution. So here you'll see they made an investment of 100,000 that generated a $426,000 deduction using Section 181. And so here you'll see on line 8, because of loss limitations, they only were able to use 372,000. Still a good chunk of it, right? But they're going to carry forward the remaining 53 grand and change to next year, obviously to help offset additional Roth conversion. So what was the ROI, right? Again, before they're facing about a $300,000 tax burden as a single filer in the state of Maryland on $818,000 of income. After their $372,000 deduction, as you see here, they now have only a tax burden of 139,000 state and federal, right? With a taxable income of 431,000. So all in all, what was the return for this client of the week, case study of the week? This one had a first year tax savings of $161,857, so about 162% return on their capital outlay of investment. And then again, the great news here is there's more tax savings to be had with this client using the remaining 53,000. And so now their 2 years total savings ROI is about 180,000. They'll get another about 20 grand of savings next year. And all in 2 years, they got on their 100,000 invested, 180% return on tax savings. So great case. And next week will be really exciting, as you know, Dad, that we'll get into the long-term impacts, right? What was if they did no strategy, what would the cost to wait for this client being in their 60s to just, take on these RMDs for them at age 73? And, you'll see here the long-term impact next week on really the long-term savings being the big reason of how we help them decide on this amount to Roth convert with this amount of strategy, right? And everyone's situation is a little bit different, but please tune in next week. It'll be an exciting to bring this case to close.
Yeah, and I think the moral of the story is don't compound tax, but compress time and rebound with Roth. because as
Yeah.
the economy gets turned around, we have the one big beautiful bill report, the outcome, the obstacles, excuse me, the opportunities and the obstacles. So by going to taxessave.com, that's taxessave.com, be sure to download that particular report because it's going to give you the insights of really what's changed. But the big takeaway is if you look back about early 2000s, tax rates were about 30% higher than where they are today. So not only are these things not permanent, but they're also at a pretty much almost a 3 decade low. And now that the economy's turning around, many people are realizing, wow, and you'll see this next week, the cost of waiting is very expensive. So you want to rebound with Roth. You don't want to compound more tax. So as this continues to grow, you want to grow tax free. You don't want to grow more tax exposed. So go to taxessave.com. That's taxessave.com and learn what you can do to save taxes today, to save an enormous amount of money today and long term.